Well, hello everybody. This is Femi here from Femi Diaries, and I'm just glad to have you on my channel once again. My channel is all about positive, uplifting information, things that will help us on a daily basis to get through our lives. And today, again, I have a great guest, and I feel so blessed, so happy to have him on. He's one of those people I look up to. You know, all of us in our lives have to have a few people that we really respect and mentor figures, people that we look at, people that inspire us. And today we're going to be discussing in this channel. I've mentioned earlier that I was going to do a third installment in this series called Finding Purpose in Life. I believe that this series and this whole idea of finding meaning, finding purpose in life is very crucial because none of us want to live lives that really we just kind of are going through the motions. You know, we really don't have a sense of fulfillment, a sense of destiny, a sense of having accomplished something that is really of great worth to us. So this is going to be the third installment. To go revisit the first or the second, you have to go on my YouTube channel, Femi Diaries, and you'll be able to see those first two installments. Now, this third one is going to be special because the guest I have on today is my pastor, Pastor Evan, and I'm so pumped, so excited, so happy to have Pastor Evan on. I've been trying to actually get him on since last year. Pastor Evan, how are you doing today, sir?
Man, I am so excited to be on Femi Diaries, man. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate you inviting me to do this, and sorry it's taken me a little while to work this out, but man, I'm pumped. I'm ready.
That's okay, sir. I am so glad to have you on, and again, I've introduced you to my people on my channel as my pastor, and Pastor Evan is so awesome. He's so down to earth. He's easy to talk to. The next time I'll be bringing Pastor Evan on, I'm actually going to do a live session with him. And I'm kind of informing him that now. I haven't discussed that with him before.
Sounds
But
good.
today, we're just going to discuss today. And, we're talking about this series called Finding Purpose in Life. And, looking at Pastor Evan, one of the things I'll tell you guys, Pastor Evan was really more into the athletics, and he coached, he played, and, he really thought he was going to be going in that direction. Now, looking at his life today and looking at the roles he's playing today, now as a pastor of a congregation, it looks like he's way off from what he was doing. But I know when he shares with us, he will share some perspectives on that. But, Pastor, please just introduce yourself, first of all, generally to the people on the channel, and just let them get to meet you.
Yeah, so my name's Evan Black. I'm from a suburb just north of Atlanta. And like you said, grew up playing basketball, grew up playing sports, but stuck with basketball. Nobody told me that people who look like me didn't play high level of basketball. And what I mean by that is I'm really short. I'm like 5'7". So I didn't know that I shouldn't be playing. I should pick a different sport. So I played basketball all my life, ended up getting a scholarship to Oral Roberts University. And then I was coaching at Oral Roberts University and then coached at Kennesaw State University for several years, and then got in ministry, which took me to Detroit, Michigan, and then to Round Rock, Texas. And we've been here almost 10 years and been pastoring 8 or 9 years, something like that. So, so I pastor now, married to my wife almost 15 years. We have 3 kids, and just trying to empower people to follow Jesus.
Yes. Pastor making that statement right there, that's really big for us in Faith for Life. That's the name of my church that my pastor pastors. We are all about empowering people to follow Jesus. We're trying to help people to find purpose in life. And, Pastor, kicking it off today, I really just wanted you to kind of share a little bit about your story, maybe in a kind of a nutshell, but to really give people perspective on how sometimes, because in the earlier series, I shared with them how sometimes people think maybe their passions will lead them to their purpose in life, or things they have interest in, or their, things that they feel, okay, this is maybe what I think I should be doing. But when we talk about purpose in life, sometimes that really doesn't give you the direction. So, Pastor, knowing you had coached basketball, knowing you had played, knowing that you weren't even thinking anything about ministry before or becoming a pastor. I would like you to share some of the series of events and things that happened that brought you from, being this athlete who now finds himself on a completely different, in a completely different place. So share with some of our viewers today about how this journey has played out for you.
Yeah. So like I said, I grew up playing basketball, and that's an understatement. Like I was obsessed with basketball. It
Yes,
dictated
even to
everything.
today, he's still obsessed.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably true. But I was obsessed in a different way then. Like my whole life revolved around basketball. I say this all the time. Um, I didn't go to like family functions for Thanksgiving or these holidays because if it meant a whole day away from the gym or away from being able to train, I just didn't do it. Basketball dictated my entire life. In some kind of way, I never thought about what was going to happen after basketball until I played my last game my senior year at Oral Roberts. We got beat in the conference tournament. We go back to the hotel, and it just kind of hit me. Like I knew I wasn't a professional basketball player. So I knew
Right.
I had played my last game, and I was about to graduate in several months. And I was like, I have no idea what I want to do in my life. Like I've never even thought about it, as crazy as that sounds.
Mm.
And so the head coach at the time, his name was Scott Sutton. I was actually his first recruit. So the next week after the season was over, he calls me into his office and he says, "Hey, Evan, what are you going to do now?" I was like, "Coach, I have no idea. I haven't even thought about it." He said, "Why
Mm.
don't you come back to school, go to graduate school? I'll pay for your graduate school and you can help us coach."
Wow.
And you feel me? I thought, man, that sounds way better than trying to get a real job somewhere. And so uh, I did that for 2 years, and I found that I absolutely loved coaching. Like I loved coaching more than I loved playing, and
Mm.
ended up. It's a wild story. I moved back home after those 2 years because I'd
Yes, sir.
just been away from family so long. I had nieces and nephews that didn't know me that were growing up and getting older. So I moved back home and had to just get a job. Worked a couple different jobs. Worked as a financial advisor. Worked at Bank of America, and I called this guy that I knew. He was a coaching at a Division II school at the time. I just felt like this may sound crazy, but I just felt like God told me to call him one day. I was working at the
Mm.
bank, picked up the phone, called him, said, "Hey, coach, this is Evan." He said, "Hey, Evan, if you're calling about the assistant coaching job, meet me at this O'Charlie's, this restaurant at 6 o'clock. Hey, I got to run. I got to go, but thanks for calling. I'll meet you there." And feel me, I had no idea what he was even talking about.
And Pastor, I was just about to mention that to people, viewers. I mean, if you listen to what he said, it wasn't like he had actually tried to get in touch with him based on this position. Go ahead,
Yeah,
sir.
no, I had known him since I was 7 years old, and I used to go to a camp that he ran. And at this point, we were just kind of friends, and I just called him, and he's like, "Hey, meet me at this restaurant." We met at the
Wow.
restaurant, and come to find out, he had just won a Division II national championship, and he had three assistant coaches. All three assistant coaches got head coaching jobs, so they all left at the same
Yeah.
time. At that time that I called, we had dinner at
Wow.
6 o'clock. By 8:30, he offered me a position as his top assistant coach. And so this was something, that I was praying for. I wanted to get into coaching. I knew I loved it from my time at Oral Roberts.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was able to step into that. I absolutely loved it. I loved
Wow.
every minute of it. And then God called me into ministry, and I stepped out of that and stepped into ministry. And here's what I would say about this, because a lot of times it's really difficult to see the line of what God's calling you to do when you're
Yeah.
in it. It's not until you look backwards that you can
Mm.
see the line of what God is going to do or what he's done. So now
Yeah.
that I look back, I can see how being a coach and working at a bank and all these different things have helped me
Yeah.
become a better pastor. But in those
Yeah.
moments, I would have never thought. I mean, you could have given me 100 guesses of what I'd be doing when I was 40 years old, and none of them would be pastoring.
Yeah.
Absolutely none of them.
Yeah. And Pastor, one thing that kind of interests me, like you were saying, is uh, many times you talked about in your situation, you talked about how you have got these two jobs, just in between before the call to ministry. And you also talked about how everything has tied up. So, viewers, basically, what I'm trying to say here is, sometimes we feel we're wasting time or that what we're doing has no meaning, but there's always a way that God can help to really tie things together for us. But Pastor, I believe there was still a desire in your heart to find out what God wanted you to do in life. Because at the end of the day, we do know that there's a creator, a living God who has made all of us. We just didn't appear here. Now, we've heard of stories about people talking about the Big Bang and all that. We choose to believe that there's some intelligent creator who has created us all. Now, in saying that, we realize that there has to be a reason why we're here. And if like I shared in one of the earlier series, I was talking about how the Apple products, there's something about the Apple products that people who are in the Apple space know more about that product than people on the outside because they manufactured the product. So I think there's something to be said about the fact that our intelligent creator who created us knows how well we can function. He will know how we can function better than we do. Every item we see today are fulfilling a function. You talk about maybe the electricity or the bulb, the light bulb. It provides light for us. Automobiles or cars get us around. They fulfill a certain function. And the manufacturer of that product knew exactly what he had in mind before that product was made. So, I would like you to kind of speak a little bit more on beginning to help people to kind of narrow down options and to really begin to help people to see how they can connect with God in trying to search or find out the meaning for their lives and for their purpose in life.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of this time that we read about in Matthew chapter 16, where Jesus is with his disciples. And these were just guys who followed him around trying to learn from him. And he asked him a question. He says, "Who do other people say that I am?"
Mm.
And so they start, responding with, honestly, they start responding with like all these guys who had already died. Like these guys,
Yeah,
uh, Elijah, Jeremiah, one of the prophets.
yeah,
And one of them does say John the Baptist, but they're saying, here's who everybody says that you are. And then Jesus asks them the most important question that he ever asked them. And
yeah,
he's asking us today. It's the same question, and it's the most important question we'll ever answer. And he asks them this. He says, "But who do you say that I am?" So he says, "Okay, you've told me who other people think that I am, but now who do you say that I am?" And this is
yeah,
fascinating. It
yeah.
tells us that Peter replies and says, "You're the Christ, the Son of the living God."
Mm.
And now reading the Bible, even if you're not a believer, this is like not news. This, we understand this. This is written. We've heard it, whether we believe it or not. But at this point in this time, this was a radical statement. And so
Mhm.
Jesus responds. And first of all, he says, "Blessed are you." So he
Yeah,
pronounces a blessing on them.
yeah.
And then he says something amazing. He says, "For flesh and blood has not revealed
Mhm.
this to you, but my Father who is in heaven." All right. So he says, you didn't get this just from figuring it out in your head. Like
Mm.
you got this from God. God gave you this understanding. And then he says, "And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I'll give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." So there's a lot in this, but I see a form, I see a pattern,
Yeah,
I see an
yeah,
outline for us finding our purpose. There's a lot
yeah,
of people who talk about passion. Passion
yeah,
will lead you to your purpose, or
yeah,
what you're good at will lead you to your purpose. But I
yeah.
don't really see that in the scriptures. I
Mm.
see God leading people into purpose that had no passion for it. Think of Jonah. Jonah wanted nothing to do with going to Nineveh. Like, he didn't like those people. He was afraid of those people. And God is like, "That's where I want you to go." And I don't see Jonah saying, "God, I love them so much. Thank you for sending me there." I
Yeah,
don't see examples of God saying, "Hey, go speak to these people." And they're like, "God, thank you so much, because I speak so well." I'm just so glad
Mm.
that you're using what I'm good at or what I'm
Right.
passionate
Right.
about. I see people saying like, God, you
Mm.
want me to go do that? Like I stutter. I'm not good at this. And we
Mm.
find this here in Matthew chapter 16. This is an outline. Here's the outline. Peter correctly identifies Jesus. That's the first step. So if you're a follower of Jesus,
Yeah.
then you're already on your way. You've correctly identified who Jesus is. Now you may need to correctly identify him in a more specific way. You may need
Yeah.
to correctly identify him as the one who leads you to your purpose.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of different ways that you could do that. But then once Peter correctly identified Jesus, then Jesus gives Peter his identity. He tells
That's
him, blessed are you, Simon Barjona, for flesh and blood hasn't. So he tells him, here's who you are. So
yeah.
once you correctly identify Jesus, you need to allow Jesus to correctly identify you. Let me say it a different way. You need to find out who God has called you to be, what he says
Yeah.
about you, and that starts
Yeah.
in his word,
Yeah.
right? So that starts with um, the promises and the things that he speaks to you through his word. And through that, you'll learn how to hear his voice in prayer.
Yeah.
Because the next part of that is after Jesus correctly identified Peter, then he gives him an assignment. He says, you are Peter, and on this rock, which is a revelation, which is understanding, I will build my church and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom, whatever you
Right.
bind. So he's starting to tell him, all right, here's your purpose. And it's because you've correctly identified me. You've allowed me to correctly identify you. And then that third step is
Yeah.
God will begin to give you purpose. And let me say this too about purpose. Many times people think that they have a singular purpose. Like, what's my purpose?
Right.
So they might look at my life and say, all right, Evan, your purpose is to pastor.
Yeah.
Well, that's like one piece of my purpose.
That's
My
right.
purpose is multifaceted. I have a purpose as a man. I have a
Yep.
purpose as a father. I have a purpose as a husband. I
Yeah.
have a purpose as a pastor.
Yeah.
I have a purpose as somebody in the community. I have a purpose as a friend. I have a purpose as a Christian. Like we have a lot of different purposes, and people get caught
Right.
up on a singular purpose. And essentially,
Yeah.
what they're saying is, what does God want me to do in my profession and my career?
Yeah.
And I believe that we find that purpose, especially not through passion, but through prayer.
That's
We
good.
find purpose through
That's
prayer,
good.
not through passion.
That's
Because
good.
if it was passion or even what I was good at, I would
Yeah.
still be coaching basketball.
That's right. That's
Abraham, Moses, Jonah, even Paul, Peter, like these guys in the Bible would not have done what they did if it was just about what they were good at and what they were
yeah.
passionate about.
Pastor, I want you to speak a little bit more to that aspect because I can bet there will be people who will view this video and I can completely relate with some of what you're talking about. That sometimes we think it's the things that we're passionate about or things of that. So I can tell you some of the stuff I'm doing today are not things I would have chosen to do because for me they're not things that will come to me naturally to do. But I want you to speak a little bit to that because a lot of people are on the side of okay, I'm passionate about this. These are my values. These are the things I would love to do. And you've just kind of stated to us certain things that are very, very crucial for us to understand. That our purpose lies in the Creator, and He gives us our purpose in life. He helps us to identify what that thing is. And you talked about that in the life of Peter. And you made some comments about some people in the Bible who, if they were made to choose, they wouldn't have chosen what they had to do. Now, how can we kind of, I want you to kind of develop that a little bit more for people. Um, how can people begin to walk that out? Now you talked about prayer also for people to, when they go into the place of prayer and into the place of God's word, that can help them to really begin to identify some of these things. Now somebody says, oh well, I don't feel like doing this. I don't feel like this should be what I'm doing. And I heard your pastor saying that sometimes God will have us do certain things that we don't really feel like doing. I want you to kind of speak to that aspect a little bit.
Yeah, I think okay. So you have different um, it depends on where people are in their
Yeah.
life and spiritually, right? Like if you're not a believer in
Yes.
Jesus,
Yeah.
then, you know, I can help you a little bit, but I'm a pastor. So
Yes.
for me, we could talk about purpose, but until you give your life to Jesus,
Yeah.
we're talking about something that's secondary, right?
That,
So if you're not a believer in Jesus, again, if we go back to that example, first step is correctly identify Jesus. What I'm
yeah.
more interested in is introducing you to Jesus. Now, let's talk to those who are believers.
Yeah.
You hear it preached, you hear it talked about. Again, find your passion, find what you're good at. I've
Yeah.
also heard this a lot: find a big need and like
Mm,
what breaks your heart, and that's, you know, that's where your
yeah.
purpose is. But again, I just don't really see that in the scripture. Even
Yeah.
Psalms 37 is oftentimes taken out of context. We'll say, you
Yeah.
know, God will give you the desires of your heart. So, what that means is whatever you want to do, whatever you're passionate about, go do that and you'll be fulfilling purpose. But you miss the beginning of Psalms 37,
Right.
stanza 4. The
Mm,
beginning of that says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he
in the
will give you
Lord.
the desires of your heart. So, if you don't first delight yourself in the Lord, then you're expecting desires to be given to you that are not going to be given to you. And here's why they're not going to be given to you: because they're not in line with him.
Yeah. Mm,
See, the problem with following what you're good at or what you're passionate about, or even a major need,
yeah.
is you don't know the end from the beginning. See,
That's.
you're not able to look back in time
Hmm.
and see what God will do in the next 10, 15, 20 years, the rest of your life. But
Yeah.
God is. He's outside of time. So he already knows what's coming. He knew I needed to coach basketball. I needed to work in a bank. I needed to gain some skills and some understandings to get to a point to to be able to love people and empower people in this new role. Now, what that means for 10 or 15 years from now, that's
Yeah.
between God and me, and really just God telling me what to
Yeah.
do. And
Right.
so what happens is too many times we try to eat the whole elephant with one bite, right?
Mm,
But
mm.
you can't eat the elephant of your life in one
Oh.
bite. You have to eat it one bite at a time. So what does that mean? That means what we need to do as believers is we need to find out what God is saying and do that.
Yeah.
Right? We have a lot of what he said already written in his word. And if
Yeah.
that's where you're at, then start right there. What does that mean? That means start investing some time in his word. Start reading it. Start praying. You may not know exactly what to say or how it's supposed to go. Just start.
Yeah.
Start. You know,
Yeah.
many times the greatest enemy uh to perfection is just simply starting. People want to wait till they know how to do everything to start. Like,
Wow. That,
that's not how this works. Go
that's.
ahead and start. Once you've developed some of this, not just reading his word and praying, but
Hmm.
finding out what his
Hmm.
word says. You know,
Yeah.
things about integrity, honesty, character, how to handle your money,
Yeah.
how to not just go off and do everything you want to do. Start right there. And what are you
Yeah.
doing? You're taking bites of this elephant that will
Yeah.
lead you to purpose. Then,
Yeah.
once you familiarize yourself with what God has said in his word, then begin to develop the skill of hearing what God is saying. Because
Yeah.
it's one thing to know you shouldn't lie, it's another thing to know what job you should go work at. Right? So you got to find out what God has said and have that as a foundation, a basis for you. And then you
Yeah.
develop into what God is saying so that he can lead you and guide you. And let me say this: some people may say, like, that sounds too much, or that sounds spooky, or I don't
Yeah.
know about all that. Let
Right.
me say this: you go through and look through scripture. If you believe in the Bible makes it very clear that this is how we were wired. This is how we were designed. We were
Yeah.
never designed to be able to figure out our purpose, our direction, the end from
Yeah.
the beginning, even
Yeah.
right from wrong on our own. We
That's
go all
good.
the way back to Genesis,
Mm.
right? Like the tree that God told Adam not to eat of was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
In the book of Jeremiah, it says that it was not in us to know right from wrong, to know direction, to know all of that. Then in Proverbs, it tells us to trust in the Lord with all our heart, lean not to our own understanding,
Yeah.
acknowledge him in all our ways, and he'll direct our paths. Then you fast forward to the New Testament. Jesus says that we shouldn't live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from God's mouth. We read that Jesus only did what he saw the Father do and only said what he heard the Father say. So this is a pattern.
Yeah.
It's not in us. God did not download it in us to know all the answers, to know what we should do. So to find purpose, we need to simply start obeying what we know to do today. And that this step today will lead to another step tomorrow, which will lead to another step another day. And then we'll be able to look back and see, oh, this is how God put all this together. But if we go out on our own and we just try to do what we want to do, we may even have some form of success. Like, I think there's something worldly, naturally intelligent about saying, find out what you're passionate about, never work a day in your life. Like, you could make a lot of money with that. You could have some happiness with that. But the here's the thing. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm not afraid of being unsuccessful.
Yeah.
I do have a fear of finishing my life doing something other than what God wanted me to do.
That's real.
And here's why. Because purpose, or you might in church, you might hear this term calling, which just means an invitation.
Yeah.
Is really not about position. It's not about money. It's not even really much about function. Purpose, calling, it's about people. So if I finish my life being an amazing basketball coach when God wanted me to be a pastor, then I might have won a bunch of games. I might have made a lot of money. I might have had a lot of fame and prestige, but I would have missed out on impacting people that God desired for me to impact. And that's the key. We talk about this all the time, Femi, but listen, if you're a believer, once you give your life to Jesus, the simple fact that you don't go to heaven right away is an indication that you have purpose.
Something for you to do. That's right.
And it can't be about you and you being here, because heaven is so much greater in every way than anything we'll experience here. You know, the most beautiful sunrise, the most amazing things that'll happen here, the most fulfilling relationships pale in comparison to heaven. So if we're here, even after we've given our lives to Jesus, then it's not about us having bigger, better, nicer. It's about us impacting more people. So our calling, our purpose, it may have a position, it may have a title, it may have a function, but what it's really about people.
Yeah. That's so good. That is so good. In fact, the next question I was going to ask, you already answered it. You know, I was about to ask you to tell us why purpose was so important. And man, viewers, I mean, he has laid it all out there. Reasons why it's so important for us to find the purpose in our lives. And I like how he presented it, that it's not just one thing. There are several things that we'll do. Like he said, he's a father, he's a pastor. And one of the things about Pastor Evan, I would like to share with you guys is he's a community man. He's really, really involved with the community too. And he has a heart for the community also. So these are all things that we'll have to take into consideration as we begin to approach God to really make things clear to us. And, you know, I like what he was saying when he began to talk about some who are non-Christians. And I'm certain that there will be some non-Christian people that will view this video, but I'd like you to approach it with a very objective mind and really listen to the content and, you know, give yourself some time to think over it. And if hopefully you will find, you know, some nuggets and some things that will help you there. And you can leave me comments on my page and we could have a conversation or take it from here. And I'm open to really be of value to you in your walk or in your discovery of who God is or who Jesus is, or really making some progress in your life. Man, this has been awesome. This has been awesome. Just on the lighter side, Pastor Evan, I wanted you to tell us give us we have some things, some plaques and some other things on the back wall over
Oh
there. I want
yeah.
you to just kind of walk my viewers through some of those. Now, this kind of gives you guys a good idea about Pastor Evan and some of the places he has been. Pastor
Yeah,
Evan, walk
yeah.
us through some of the things behind you right there.
Y- Yeah, so my wife doesn't allow me to have a man cave. So my office is is the closest thing I have to it. So let's see. Over here, no wait, over there, there. That's that brown plaque on the end, oh the other
Yeah,
end. That, you know what I mean. It's all
yeah,
backwards. That's actually a really cool little painting that a buddy of mine gave me a couple years ago when I married him and his wife. Above me over here is my jersey from Oral Roberts University. On your last home game, they frame it for you and give you
yeah.
that. On the other side over here, that is actually, I won a trip to Hawaii when I was 10 years old and got to go to the Pro
Yeah.
Bowl. And so I got all the Pro Bowl players to autograph it. And that's a program and
There's
some of
a
the
picture
most,
on the side of it right there. Are those live
yeah,
pictures?
yeah,
Wow.
those are pictures from
Nice.
when I was there and some of my favorite players. So in there you got Ronnie
Oh,
Lott, you got Barry Sanders, you got
that is
Joe
awesome.
Theismann. Yeah, you got some, it's pretty cool. And then the rest of the stuff. So I got my picture over here of my wife and my little girl.
Yeah.
Um, and then some Falcons stuff behind me,
Oh, people,
Brave stuff up there.
man, if Pastor Evans starts with football, I mean,
Uh,
hey, we're going to talk
yeah,
about the Falcons for the rest of our time here.
yeah, I got some other stuff, but let's see. You see, there's a little uh over that, the Julio helmet over here. I
Yeah,
can't.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So that's a little mini helmet. It's got Julio Jones's autograph on it. Um,
Wow, that's awesome.
this other frame, gosh, I should be better. There we go. This right here. This is
Uh-huh.
um back when the movie uh oh, what's the movie? It was the Love Dare, when all that anyways, the Love Dare book came out. This is a
Wow.
resolution as a husband, as a father, that me and my wife we bought, and it goes through, and like, I commit to living a life of integrity and praying for her
Yeah.
and covering her and all of those things. And then me and my oldest son signed it. I don't even know if he could write back then. We kind of made it to write it. So yeah, that's just a little bit of some of
That's
the stuff
awesome.
that my wife couldn't say no, because this is my side of the office.
Yeah, yeah. We all need a little side somewhere.
Yeah.
All right, Pastor. So I'm going to ask you one more question and I'll let you kind of give us some closing comments. But before that, I just want to, so let's kind of talk just for a moment about, now we talked about that purpose is not just one thing. So kind of expound a little bit more. How do people fulfill their purpose when we talk about their family, with their wife, with their children, in the community? Kind of give people a little bit of a picture of what that looks like. When you're functioning in your purpose in those different arenas. Now, I mean, obviously, we know a lot of people, like you rightfully said, are always thinking just in the line with their career. When we talk about fulfilling purpose, but it's all encompassing. It has to do with your career, it has to do with your life, it has to do with your kids, it has to do with places and people that God will tie you to. And just before I forget, I wanted to mention this. I love how you tied everything to the fact that the reason why we are still all here is because there are people that God will have us be a blessing to. That was so powerful. I had to make sure I didn't forget that,
Yeah.
for my viewers to kind of see as very salient and very important. So, Pastor,
Yeah.
just give us a little bit of an expounded picture of how you fulfill those different areas of your life.
Yeah. So a lot of the areas actually, you can go through the scripture and God will tell you, what your purpose is in that area and how to fulfill it. So let's take just being a Christian man, right? So what's my purpose as a Christian man? Well, Psalms 112 um, gives us some insight into that. And I'm not going to read it all to you, but it talks about delighting in God and his commandments. It gives some promises about your offspring, and it says wealth and riches are in his house and his righteousness endures. So
Yeah.
um, being gracious and merciful and righteous. Here's my point. You can go through the scripture and
Yeah.
find the purpose as a Christian man.
Yeah.
Now, you could do that if you're married. You could do that. You can go to one of my favorite ones, and I believe one of the most encompassing ones is Ephesians chapter 5 for a husband. So, what's my purpose as a husband? Ephesians
Husband.
chapter 5, verse 25. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself
Yeah.
up for her. And you can go on all the way through the rest of that chapter. It's like, all right, there's my purpose as a
Mm.
husband. As a wife, you can back up a few verses in verse 22. It lays it out for you.
Yeah.
Uh, as a father, the scripture talks about things that a father should do and a father
Yeah.
shouldn't do.
Yeah.
So a lot of these things, you got to start with what is written.
Yeah.
What has God already put in place? And here's why you have to do that. If I go to God and I say, God, what's my purpose as a husband? And God's
Yeah.
written it down, God may lead me to that. I may hear something. But if I keep like, God, what's my purpose as a husband? What's my purpose as a husband? And it's already written,
Yeah.
God's going to tell me, just go read what's written. You wanting some other answer, but it's already
Pretty
written.
much.
It's already written. Now,
Right.
there are things such as profession, like it doesn't say in the Bible, Evan shall be a pastor,
Yeah.
right? So I
No.
have to it doesn't tell Evan necessarily what my purpose is in the community. It gives me some insight, but not real specific. It
Yeah.
doesn't tell me what to do with some of the righteous passions that God has placed in me. So
Yeah.
for those things, I have to again start with what God said in order to find out what God is saying. And so how do you do that? You got to find out, what does the Bible say about prayer and about
Yeah.
hearing from God?
Yeah.
And you need to learn how to hear God's voice, because as a believer, the most important skill you can develop is the ability to hear God's voice. And this isn't
Yeah.
just what I'm saying in my experience, but through the scriptures. Um, there's this story in the Bible of God telling Abram to sacrifice his son.
Yeah.
And like, how crazy is that? Like, God, how is this part of my purpose, especially when I wanted a son and you finally blessed me with a son and you promised all these kids, and like, I'm getting
Yeah.
old, but God, I'm just going to obey. And that's just the step to my purposes. I'm just going to obey. And he is about to do it. I mean, his arm is up in the air. He's ready to come down.
Mm.
And God says, all right, stop. Now,
Yeah.
if he's not able to hear God's voice, if
Wow.
he's not able to quickly hear God's voice, then he's going to completely miss this portion
Ooh.
of purpose. He's going to miss this window of what God wanted to do in that. Now, God is gracious. He's merciful. He can redeem and restore. And I know those are church words, but he can make it right. He can
Yeah.
fix it whenever we miss it. But the biggest skill we can develop is the skill of learning to hear God's voice. And that starts with what the Bible says about prayer and how the Bible teaches us to hear God's voice.
That's awesome. Man, people. I mean, you guys are hearing. I know one of the things I really intend to really achieve on this channel is to really tell people, my truth. It's my truth, but at the same time to lay it out in such a way that is very objective, so that people can also research and find things out for themselves. And I mean, talking about finding your purpose in life, to be honest with you, people, I've really never heard any. I do hear what Pastor Evan says, because he's my pastor. But apart from him, and maybe a few things I've read, I've never really heard anybody really address or direct this topic the way he has laid it out for us today. Because
And that
many
makes me
times,
nervous because I don't
yeah,
hear that either.
yes, because a lot of people, I think people assume that people do understand things like this, and they just talk to people on the surface level. But a lot of people are struggling today, who are trying to find meaning in their lives. People are going a second, a third career, and they just keep having this thing of not being fulfilled, not knowing that there's something else they're supposed to be doing. It's almost like a void on the inside, but haven't found out what the reason for the void is. And that's one of the things that really led to my wanting to really delve into this topic and really actually have Pastor Evan come talk about it also. So people, if you still have any questions as it regards this topic, calling finding purpose, please, my comment section is open. We can have this conversation. I can, we can reach out to me and we'll really kind of chop it up and take it from here. It doesn't have to end with this particular series. But Pastor Evan, just to kind of round up at this time, I don't know if there are certain things that maybe on your heart you would like to also share with the viewers in line with this topic called finding purpose.
Yeah, I would just encourage everybody to reshape how you think about purpose. We think for me, I think of people like Dr. Martin Luther King,
Yeah,
or some of these people that have a ton of notoriety and looks like, man, their purpose was amazing and they fulfilled it,
yeah,
and man, they just made a huge impact on the world. And man, that's true.
yeah,
But that may not be your purpose. Your purpose
yeah,
may not be to be on TV or lead thousands in a revolution. And that's okay. That's okay. The purpose is not about power. It's not about prestige. Purpose is really, it's just about obeying God. And if we will learn to do that, you may not experience receiving all the accolades in the world. You may not become the richest person in the world, but you will have a joy and a peace that the Bible says surpasses all understanding, which is in many ways far greater than most of the other things that really everything that the world has to offer. And let me say this too: we may not know in our lifetime how our purpose impacted people.
that's good.
So if I invest the rest of my life just being the best dad and training my kids and giving my kids everything that I can, not just financially, but so much more than that, I may not I may not live long enough to see how God uses them or their kids to impact the world. Whenever I think about somebody great who's fulfilled a great purpose, I often think about their dad or their granddad.
Yeah.
So you ever heard anybody talk about Dr. Martin Luther King's dad? I mean, not very often. I mean, I've heard a
Right.
couple things, but not much.
Hmm.
So what kind of impact does his dad have through what his
Mm,
son did?
yeah.
So don't judge your purpose based on how big you think it is or even the step that you're on. Just strive to be
Yeah.
excellent with what you're doing now and be
Yeah.
ready to take that next step when it's time.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. So, in a nutshell, what Pastor Evan is saying to us is it doesn't have to be what we see as with all the big accolades and the fame and the notoriety, like he said. It could be those simple everyday tasks, taking care of your children. It could just be, the basic things of life that we call basic. But if somebody didn't do it or if somebody didn't fulfill that role, then who knows who those kids are going to become, for example, and
Mhm.
what they would do in their lives. So you're spending that time to point to them, you're spending that time to really grow them and help them to learn the things they need to help to do will help them to fulfill their purpose in life. And it it just keeps trickling down like that. From them, they will also impact other people who will also go ahead and go fulfill their purpose in life. Pastor Evan, this has been an awesome time. I really appreciate you coming on Femi Diaries today to really share with us and spend this time with us.
Man, I'm so thankful. You're doing amazing on Femi Diaries. I love them. I love all the social media stuff too. So, man,
Thank you.
thanks for having me, man. Keep it up.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Well, people, we're going to sign off at this time. It's been awesome having Pastor Evan on. I will catch you guys in the next one.